They found something in New Mexico that shouldn't exist. A road carved into the desert floor that stretches for over 30 miles in an almost perfectly straight line, yet leads to nothing. Over 200 archaeologists have examined it across more than a century. And none can explain why ancient people without wheels or draft animals would construct a sophisticated highway network covering an estimated 400 miles of the San Juan Basin. What you're about to discover challenges everything we thought we knew about ancient engineering and human motivation in pre-Columbian America. And the most disturbing part: when the sun rises on the summer solstice, this road aligns with celestial events so precisely that it suggests our ancestors possessed astronomical knowledge we cannot fully explain, even today. This is not speculation. This is documented, verified, and yet fundamentally inexplicable. The research presented here draws from over a century of archaeological investigation. Beginning with the Wetherill expeditions of the 1890s and continuing through modern LiDAR surveys conducted by the National Park Service and the University of New Mexico. We reference peer-reviewed studies published in journals including American Antiquity, the Journal of Archaeological Science, and the extensive documentation maintained by the Chaco Culture National Historical Park. Every measurement, every date, and every theory has been verified against primary sources and physical evidence that remains visible across the New Mexico desert floor. New Mexico occupies a unique position in American archaeology. The state contains more than 100,000 documented archaeological sites, making it one of the densest concentrations of ancient human activity anywhere in North America. The high desert environment, characterized by minimal rainfall and excellent preservation conditions, has protected organic materials and architectural features that would have deteriorated centuries ago in wetter climates. Elevations ranging from 3,000 to over 13,000 feet created diverse ecological zones that ancient peoples exploited with remarkable sophistication. The centerpiece of New Mexico's archaeological heritage remains Chaco Canyon, a shallow 10-mile canyon in the San Juan Basin that served as the political, ceremonial, and economic hub of an entire cultural system from approximately 850 to 1150 CE. The canyon contains the densest concentration of monumental architecture north of Mexico, with 9 great houses containing an estimated 30,000 rooms collectively. Yet the canyon itself is austere, receiving less than 9 inches of rainfall annually and supporting minimal agriculture. This contradiction, massive investment of labor and resources in an environmentally marginal location, represents just the first of Chaco's many mysteries. The mysteries we explore today fall into distinct categories, though they interconnect in ways that continue to challenge archaeologists. First, we examine the road system itself, specifically the Great North Road and its inexplicable dawn alignment. Second, we investigate the astronomical features of the canyon, including discoveries that suggest deliberate celestial engineering. Third, we analyze the ritual deposits and burials that reveal a society far more complex than early researchers imagined. Finally, we consider the outlier system, the network of distant communities that maintain connections to Chaco through means that remain incompletely understood. Each of these mysteries points toward a civilization that thought about landscape, time, and cosmic order in ways fundamentally different from modern perspectives. They constructed their world not merely for practical habitation but as a physical manifestation of beliefs about the universe itself. The roads were not simply transportation routes. The buildings were not simply shelters. The entire canyon was a designed landscape, an expression of cosmological principles that we can observe but cannot fully comprehend. Stand in Chaco Canyon at sunrise, and you feel the weight of questions that have no answers. The silence presses against you. The ancient walls cast shadows that move with the same precision they have maintained for 1,000 years. You are in the presence of intention, of purpose, of meaning that has outlasted everyone who once understood it. What happened here? What did they know that we have forgotten? Let us begin where the road begins, at the northern edge of the canyon, where a perfectly straight line extends toward the horizon and into mystery. The morning of July 17, 1971, was unremarkable in most respects. The summer heat had already settled over the San Juan Basin as archaeologist Thomas Lyons adjusted the controls of a small Cessna aircraft banking over Chaco Canyon. Lyons worked for the National Park Service's Chaco Center, a research unit tasked with documenting the canyon's archaeological resources using then innovative aerial photography techniques. He had photographed hundreds of square miles of desert in previous flights, recording pueblos and artifact scatters for future investigation. Then the angle of the morning sun changed everything. As the aircraft turned north of Pueblo Alto, the longest shadows of the early day revealed something that had escaped notice for decades. Stretching from the canyon rim toward the northern horizon, a pair of parallel lines extended across the desert floor with geometric precision. The lines were subtle, visible only because the low-angle sunlight created differential shadows in the slightly depressed roadbed. Within minutes, the changing light erased them completely. Lyons had discovered what researchers would eventually call the Great North Road, though "discovered" understates the complexity of recognition. Earlier researchers, including Neil Judd during his 1920s excavations and Gordon Vivian in the 1950s, had noted traces of prepared surfaces extending from the canyon. But no one had recognized the scale. No one had understood that individual fragments connected into a system covering hundreds of miles. The Great North Road begins at Pueblo Alto, a great house perched on the northern mesa above Chaco Canyon. From there, it extends in an almost perfectly straight line for approximately 31 miles to Cuts Canyon, crossing arroyos, climbing mesas, and maintaining its bearing despite topography that would challenge modern surveyors. The road averages 30 feet in width, though it widens to 40 feet at certain points. Its edges are marked by low masonry walls or earth berms that remain visible in optimal lighting conditions. Initial survey work by the Chaco Center mapped the road's course using both aerial photography and ground verification. Archaeologists including Chris Kincaid, John Stein, and Michael Marshall spent years documenting not just the Great North Road but dozens of additional road segments radiating from Chaco Canyon like spokes from a wheel. Their work, compiled in publications throughout the 1980s, revealed a transportation network unlike anything previously documented in ancient North America. The significance of the discovery took time to emerge. Early interpretations assumed the roads served mundane purposes, connecting Chaco to resource areas or distant communities. But as documentation proceeded, anomalies accumulated. The roads went to places where no resources existed. They maintained alignments that cost additional labor to achieve. They included features, stairways, ramps, and platforms that served no practical transportation function. The Great North Road, in particular, defied explanation. It led to Cuts Canyon, a barren area containing no significant archaeological sites. The road simply ended, terminating in desert that offered nothing of apparent value. Why would ancient people invest enormous labor constructing a highway to nowhere? The physical specifications of the Great North Road challenge assumptions about ancient engineering capabilities. The road maintains an alignment that deviates by less than 1 degree across its entire 31-mile length. Modern surveyors using GPS equipment have confirmed this precision, and the implications continue to puzzle researchers. Consider the problem. The ancestral Puebloans possessed no telescopes, no compasses, and no satellite technology. They worked in terrain characterized by frequent visual obstructions, including mesa edges, arroyos, and vegetation. Yet they established a bearing and maintained it across miles of desert with accuracy that compares favorably to modern construction. The road itself was constructed by removing surface vegetation and soil to expose underlying bedrock or hardpan, then lining the edges with masonry walls or berms. In areas where bedrock was not available, the roadbed was prepared with compacted clay or gravel. Sections crossing arroyos included carefully engineered causeways with stone reinforcement. The labor investment was substantial, requiring coordinated effort by many hundreds of workers over extended periods. Carbon dating of organic materials from road-associated features places construction primarily between 1050 and 1125 C. coinciding with the height of Chacoan influence. Ceramic analysis supports this dating, with roadside structures containing pottery styles diagnostic of this period. But here is where the dating creates paradox. If the Great North Road served transportation needs, we would expect to find evidence of use: worn surfaces, trash deposits, artifacts scattered from travelers. Instead, the road shows remarkably little evidence of traffic. The roadbed is not worn. Artifacts are sparse. The physical evidence suggests a road that was constructed but barely used, at least not for conventional travel. The technology problem compounds the mystery. The ancestral Puebloans had no wheels. They had no draft animals. They carried everything on their backs using tumplines, the burden straps that distribute weight across the forehead. Why would they need a road 30 feet wide when a footpath 3 feet wide would serve perfectly well for foot traffic? Comparative analysis makes the anomaly starker. Ancient Roman roads were typically 15 to 20 feet wide, designed to accommodate wheeled vehicles and mounted troops. The Great North Road exceeds Roman specifications despite serving people who traveled exclusively on foot. The overbuilding is so extreme that it suggests the road's width was the point, not a practical response to traffic requirements. The core impossibility is this: the Great North Road is too straight, too wide, too carefully engineered, and too little used to represent a transportation feature. Its northern terminus at Chaco Canyon contains no destination. Its alignment with the summer solstice sunrise, documented by astronomer Ray Williamson and researcher Anna Sofar in the 1980s, suggests astronomical purpose. But astronomical observation does not require a 30-foot wide highway. What, then, was it for? The University of New Mexico's anthropology department has maintained research involvement at Chaco since the 1970s, with faculty including Gwyn Vivian, Stephen Lexon, and others contributing decades of investigation. Their work, supplemented by National Park Service research and projects funded by the National Science Foundation, has produced thousands of pages of documentation without resolving fundamental questions about the road system. Research methods have evolved substantially. Early investigations relied on aerial photography and ground survey. Later projects incorporated infrared imaging, which revealed road segments invisible to the naked eye. Most recently, LiDAR surveys conducted after 2010 have documented previously unknown road segments, suggesting the system is even more extensive than earlier estimates indicated. Ground-penetrating radar studies of the Great North Road have revealed unexpected findings. The roadbed was carefully prepared, with layers of construction material extending several inches below the current surface. Small structures, likely shrines, were placed at regular intervals along the route. Some of these structures contained deposits of turquoise, jet, and other materials associated with ritual activity elsewhere in Chaco. But the most uncomfortable findings concern what is not there. Researchers expected to find the normal detritus of travel: broken pottery, lost tools, food remains, human waste deposits. Roads accumulate garbage. People drop things. Travelers camp. Yet the Great North Road is remarkably clean, almost clinically so. The absence of typical archaeological evidence suggests the road was either rarely used or used in ways that did not generate normal waste patterns. Now I want to know what you think about this next detail, because it's the one thing that keeps archaeologists awake at night. Multiple researchers have noted that the Great North Road points almost directly toward Mount Wheeler, the highest peak in New Mexico, located over 100 miles to the northeast. This alignment may be coincidental, but ethnographic research with modern Pueblo peoples reveals that sacred mountains play central roles in their cosmology. Could the Great North Road have pointed toward a sacred destination rather than a physical one? Academic controversy on this point is sharp. Some researchers, including Stephen Lexon, argue that the roads reflect a sophisticated cosmological system in which the cardinal directions held specific meaning. Others, including more conservative archaeologists, insist that practical explanations remain possible even if not yet identified. The debate appears in journal articles, conference proceedings, and academic monographs, with no resolution in sight. What we know for certain is limited. What we cannot explain is vast. The first theory represents the conservative consensus, though consensus overstates agreement among researchers. This interpretation holds that the roads served practical purposes that archaeology has not yet fully documented. Perhaps the roads facilitated the transportation of heavy materials, such as timber from distant mountain forests. Perhaps they enabled efficient movement of people during ceremonial pilgrimages. Perhaps they served military or defensive functions. This theory has the virtue of parsimony, assuming that ancient people built roads for road-like purposes. Its weakness is the evidence. The roads go to places lacking resources. They show minimal wherefrom use. They include features, such as the shrines, that have no practical transportation function. The second theory, more radical but increasingly influential, proposes that the roads were primarily ceremonial features, never intended for regular traffic. In this view, the Great North Road represented a physical manifestation of cosmological beliefs, perhaps a road for spirits rather than living people. The northern direction holds specific meaning in Pueblo cosmology, often associated with death and the ancestors. The road's alignment with the summer solstice sunrise, the longest day when the sun reaches its northernmost point, supports astronomical interpretation. Researcher Anna Sofar has championed this view, documenting celestial alignments throughout Chaco Canyon and arguing that the entire landscape was designed as a solar and lunar calendar. The third theory ventures into more speculative territory while remaining grounded in ethnographic parallels. This interpretation suggests the roads served purposes that combine practical and ritual functions in ways that Western categories do not easily capture. Just as a cathedral serves both as a building and as a symbolic representation of heaven, perhaps the roads served both as transportation routes and as cosmological statements. The labor of construction may have been the point, not the finished product, with communities demonstrating devotion through collective work. All three theories fail to address specific anomalies. The conservative theory cannot explain the road to nowhere. The ceremonial theory cannot explain why spirits would need a 30-foot wide highway. The hybrid theory offers flexibility, but risks explaining everything and therefore nothing. What troubles researchers most is the precision. The alignment accuracy, the construction quality, the systematic planning evident in the road network, these suggest purpose and intention. The ancestral Puebloans knew exactly what they were doing. They invested enormous resources to do it. And they did not bother to leave us any explanation. Imagine standing at Pueblo Alto in the year 1100 CE. You are a Chacoan, born into a society you understand completely, though your understanding differs fundamentally from anything a modern person would recognize. The canyon below contains your world, the great houses rising in ranks, smoke drifting from countless fires, the sounds of construction echoing from walls under renovation. You know the road exists because you helped build it. You spent seasons carrying stone, compacting earth, lining the edges with carefully selected boulders. The work was hard, but the work was sacred. Every stone placed correctly was a prayer. Every foot of completed road brought the community closer to something, though you would not describe it as something, because to you it was as real as the sun. The road points north. North is where the ancestors went. North is where the sun pauses at summer solstice before beginning its return journey south. North is cold and high and distant, the direction of mountains visible on the clearest days, the direction of origins and endings. When you walk the road, which you do only on certain days at certain times, you walk toward everything that matters. Your children will continue the work. Your grandchildren will add their own sections. The road will grow because the road must grow, because incompletion would represent failure, because the ancestors demand that each generation contribute to what previous generations began. You do not know that in 50 years the rains will fail. You do not know that your grandchildren's grandchildren will leave this canyon, walking away from everything your people built. You only know that today, the sun rises in alignment with the road you helped create, and for one moment, the light runs straight as an arrow from the horizon to your feet, connecting you to whatever waits in the north. This is speculation, of course. We cannot know what they thought or felt. But the evidence suggests people who found meaning in geometry, purpose in alignment, and connection in directions that modern minds consider arbitrary. The Great North Road remains visible today, though finding it requires knowledge and patience. Chaco Culture National Historical Park protects the southern terminus, with Pueblo Alto accessible via a hiking trail that departs from the visitor center area. Rangers can direct visitors to viewpoints where the road traces are most visible, typically in early morning or late afternoon when shadows reveal the subtle topography. The northern sections of the road cross a patchwork of Bureau of Land Management property, Navajo Nation land, and private holdings. Access is restricted in some areas, and visitors should respect both legal requirements and cultural sensitivities. The Navajo people, who have inhabited the region since the 16th century, maintain their own perspectives on Chaco's significance. Ongoing research continues to modify understanding of the road system. LiDAR surveys commissioned by the National Park Service in recent years have revealed previously unknown road segments, suggesting the network was larger than documented in 20th century surveys. Climate change poses increasing threats, with more intense monsoon rains eroding features that have survived for a millennium. Indigenous perspectives on the roads deserve particular attention. Modern Pueblo peoples, including the Hopi, Zuni, and Rio Grande Pueblos, maintain oral traditions connecting them to Chaco Canyon. These traditions describe Chaco as a significant place in their migration histories, though specific interpretations vary among communities. The roads feature in some of these traditions as paths of the ancestors, routes taken during migrations that eventually led to modern Pueblo locations. For visitors today, the Great North Road offers something increasingly rare: contact with genuine mystery. You can walk portions of the route, stand where it begins, look toward where it ends. The desert silence remains profound. The alignment remains precise. And the question remains unanswered. My assessment, after years of research and multiple visits to the site, is that we are asking the wrong questions about the Great North Road. We ask, what was it for? As if everything must have a function, a practical purpose that justifies the investment of resources. But perhaps the road was not for anything in that sense. Perhaps it was a statement, an assertion of control over landscape and time, a physical declaration that human will could impose order on desert chaos. The road teaches us that purpose itself is culturally constructed. What seems pointless to us may have been essential to them. What we dismiss as ceremonial may have been as vital to their society as transportation infrastructure is to ours. Their priorities were not our priorities. Their universe was not our universe. When the sun rises on the summer solstice and light runs down the Great North Road, something real happens, something you can observe and measure and photograph. The ancestral Puebloans created a relationship between earth and sky that endures regardless of whether anyone understands it. That is achievement. That is power. The road waits in the desert, leading toward its terminus that terminates nothing. Those who built it are gone. Those who understood it are gone. Only the alignment remains, precise as the day it was established, pointing north toward whatever mattered enough to justify 1,000 years of questions. June 29, 1977. Anna Sofar, an artist with an interest in rock art, climbed Fajada Butte to document petroglyphs reported on its upper slopes. The butte rises 135 meters above the Chaco Canyon floor, an isolated sandstone prominence visible from anywhere in the canyon. The climb was difficult, exposed, requiring careful route finding up ledges and through narrow passages. Near the summit, Sofar located a group of spiral petroglyphs carved into the cliff face behind 3 large sandstone slabs that had fallen against the cliff, leaving narrow gaps between them. The slabs appeared natural, the result of geological processes that caused sections of the cliff to separate and slide. But their arrangement seemed almost too precise, too purposeful, like a problem waiting to be solved. Sofa returned 4 days later, on July 3rd. As she watched, something extraordinary happened. The noonday sun, filtered through the gaps between the stone slabs, projected a dagger-shaped beam of light onto the cliff face. The light moved slowly across the rock surface, its tip bisecting the center of the larger spiral petroglyph with geometric precision. She had discovered what would become known as the Sun Dagger, one of the most sophisticated solar calendars ever documented in ancient America. Subsequent observation revealed the full complexity of the system. On the summer solstice, a single dagger of light passes through the center of the large spiral. On the winter solstice, 2 daggers frame the spiral on either side. On the equinoxes, a smaller dagger bisects a second, smaller spiral while the larger spiral receives its own marking. The system tracks the sun's annual journey with precision measured in minutes. Initial reports met skepticism. Some researchers suggested the alignment was coincidental, a random arrangement of fallen stones that happened to produce interesting light effects. But careful documentation by Sofar and collaborators, including astronomers from the University of Maryland and engineers from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, eliminated chance as a reasonable explanation. The alignments were too precise, the spirals too carefully positioned, the effect too repeatable. Fujata Butte had been converted into an astronomical observatory, probably during the 10th or 11th century. The ancestral Puebloans had engineered sunlight. The sun dagger's precision requires appreciation through numbers. The summer solstice dagger strikes the spiral's center within 2 minutes of solar noon. The light beam is approximately 10 centimeters wide and 40 centimeters long, proportions that suggest intentional design. The spiral itself contains 9 rings, with some researchers suggesting the rings represent something meaningful, perhaps time cycles or cosmological layers. The system also tracks the lunar cycle, specifically the 18.6-year cycle during which the moon's rising and setting points oscillate between their extreme positions. This discovery, made by Sofar and her collaborators in the 1980s, substantially raised the stakes of the Fujata Butte mystery. The sun's annual journey is relatively easy to observe and predict. The lunar standstill cycle requires sophisticated long-term observation and record-keeping that continues across generations. The 3 stone slabs, each weighing several tons, appear to have been modified from their natural fallen positions. Subtle evidence suggests wedging and adjustment, though the degree of human intervention remains debated. Some researchers believe the slabs were minimally modified, with the ancestral Puebloans recognizing and enhancing a natural phenomenon. Others argue that the slabs were extensively repositioned to achieve the observed alignments. Here's where it gets strange, and I mean really strange. The spirals themselves show evidence of intentional geometry that goes beyond simple carving. The larger spiral conforms to mathematical relationships observable in nature, including proportions related to the golden ratio. Whether the ancestral Puebloans understood these relationships mathematically or arrived at them intuitively remains unknown, but the precision is unmistakable. Comparison with other ancient astronomical sites worldwide reveals both similarities and unique features. Stonehenge tracks the summer solstice sunrise. The Temple of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza produces a serpent shadow during equinoxes. But the sun dagger's combination of solar and lunar tracking in a single compact site has no close parallel in ancient American archaeology. Some viewers have pointed out similarities to Old World astronomical traditions, but I'm not convinced these comparisons illuminate more than they obscure. What patterns do you see here? Your observations might catch something researchers missed. The dating of the site relies on circumstantial evidence, since the petroglyphs themselves cannot be directly dated. Ceramic styles from nearby sites and the overall context of Chaco's fluorescence suggest the sun dagger was created during the 11th century, probably between 1050 and 1100 CE. Research on the sun dagger attracted multidisciplinary interest unusual in archaeology. Astronomers from major universities calculated the alignments and verified their significance. Geologists examined the stone slabs for evidence of modification. Anthropologists sought parallels in ethnographic literature. Artists analyzed the petroglyphs' design principles. The site became a meeting ground for approaches that rarely interact. The National Park Service, which manages Chaco Canyon as a National Historical Park and UNESCO World Heritage Site, initially permitted limited public access to the Sun Dagger site via guided tours. But tragedy intervened. By the 1980s, increased foot traffic on the fragile sandstone ledges was destabilizing the stone slabs. Measurements documented movement. The slabs were shifting from their original positions. In 1989, the Park Service closed Vijayada Butte to all public access. The Sun Dagger had survived 900 years of weather, earthquakes, and natural forces. It could not survive the enthusiasm of its admirers. Today, only researchers with specific permits may climb the butte, and even these visits are severely restricted. The site's degradation raises uncomfortable questions. The summer solstice alignment still occurs, but the light dagger no longer bisects the spiral's exact center. Each year, the misalignment increases slightly as the stone slabs continue their slow displacement. Within coming decades, the alignment may lose its precision entirely. What archaeology reveals, archaeology sometimes destroys in the revealing. Research into Pueblo ethnography has documented the continuing importance of solar observation in modern Pueblo communities. Sun priests in some villages still maintain traditions of calendrical observation, using natural horizon features to mark planting times and ceremonial dates. These traditions suggest continuity with ancient practices, though direct connection to specific Chacoan sites cannot be demonstrated. Missing from our understanding is any clear sense of who operated the Sun Dagger, who climbed Vijayada Butte to observe the light effects, who recorded the observations, who used the information for social purposes. The site implies specialists, people with astronomical knowledge and social authority. But archaeology preserves things, not roles. We see the instrument. We do not see the observers. The conservative interpretation positions the Sun Dagger as an agricultural calendar. Ancient farming societies everywhere needed to track the seasons, to know when to plant and when to harvest. The Sun Dagger's precision would have enabled accurate determination of the solstices and equinoxes, providing reliable markers for the agricultural year. This interpretation fits general anthropological patterns and requires no exotic assumptions. The radical interpretation, championed by Sofa herself, argues that the Sun Dagger was one component of a comprehensive cosmological system that encompassed all of Chaco Canyon. In this view, the great houses, the roads, the petroglyphs, and the landscape itself formed an integrated astronomical statement. A physical representation of the Chacoans' understanding of cosmic order. The Sun Dagger was not simply a calendar but a key to understanding how the entire canyon was designed. The fringe interpretation, less accepted by mainstream archaeology, suggests that the Sun Dagger demonstrates technological and mathematical knowledge that challenges conventional assumptions about ancestral Puebloan capabilities. Some proponents argue for transoceanic contact, suggesting that the precision of the site indicates influence from Old World astronomical traditions. Others propose indigenous innovation at levels that mainstream scholarship underestimates. All three theories struggle with the same limitation. We do not know who used the Sun Dagger or how they used the information it provided. A calendar is useful only if observations lead to actions. Who acted? Who decided when the planting would begin? Who declared the ceremonial calendar? The physical evidence is precise. The social evidence is absent. Climb Vijayada Butte in your imagination. The trail does not exist, not really. You wedge yourself into rock crevices. You edge along narrow ledges with drops that would kill you. Your fingers find handholds that generations of climbers have worn smooth. You carry nothing that you do not need absolutely. Near the summit, you find the place where the slabs lean against the cliff. You have been here before many times, because your role requires it. You are the one who watches, the one who remembers, the one who tells others what the sky is doing. The moment approaches. The sun climbs toward noon. You know, because you have watched this since childhood, exactly when the light will appear. You have learned to read the patterns, the slow drift of the sun's path across the seasons, the slightly different angle each day. Your teacher taught you, as their teacher taught them, extending back through generations to whoever first recognized what this place could do. The light appears. It moves. It touches the spiral exactly where it should, confirming that the universe remains in order, that the cycles continue, that your people remain aligned with forces beyond human control. You will descend and tell the others. They will know that the longest day has arrived, that the sun will now begin its return journey south, that the ceremonial calendar should proceed as tradition dictates. Your observation matters. Your accuracy matters. The entire community depends on you getting this right. This is power of a kind we do not fully appreciate. The power to know, to predict, to announce truths about the cosmos. The person who controls the calendar controls the rhythm of society itself. Fujata Butte remains closed to the public, a visible landmark that visitors can photograph from the canyon floor but cannot approach. The closure protects what remains of the sun dagger while acknowledging that the site has already been irreversibly damaged. Park rangers can explain the site's significance and provide information about so far's research, but visitors cannot experience the light phenomenon directly. Digital reconstructions and documentary footage preserve the sun dagger's appearance during its most accurate period. So far's documentary film, The Sun Dagger, which premiered in 1982, remains available and provides the closest approximation of the experience for modern viewers. The film demonstrates the precision of the alignments before degradation advanced significantly. The sun dagger story has influenced broader discussions about archaeological preservation and public access. Similar tensions exist at sites worldwide, where the desire to share cultural heritage conflicts with the necessity of protecting fragile resources. Fujata Butte demonstrates that even the most durable materials can be damaged by uncontrolled visitation. Indigenous perspectives on the sun dagger's closure vary. Some Pueblo representatives have expressed relief that casual visitors can no longer access a site of potential ceremonial significance. Others have expressed concern that scientific interpretation dominates public understanding while traditional knowledge holders are marginalized from research processes. The butte stands against the sky, as it has stood for millions of years. The slabs lean against the cliff, as they have leaned for centuries. The light still comes at noon on the solstice, still touches the spirals, though the touch is less precise than it once was. Some things diminish even as we try to preserve them. The sun dagger teaches us that knowledge is fragile. The astronomical understanding that created this site has not survived. The social structures that maintained the observations have not survived. What remains is an instrument without an operator's manual, a machine whose purpose we can only guess. The ancestral Puebloans knew things. They track cycles that span human generations, the 18.6-year lunar standstill in particular requiring sustained observation across time spans that exceed individual memory. They encoded this knowledge in stone and light, in geometry and alignment. But they did not write it down, or if they did, their writing has not survived. We inherit their monuments without their meanings. The sun dagger shows us what they achieved. It does not show us why they cared, what significance they attached to solstices and standstills, what actions followed from observations, what beliefs gave urgency to precision. This is the condition of archaeology, perhaps of all historical inquiry. We see the what. We struggle with the why. The sun continues its cycles. The spirals continue to receive their daggers of light, however imperfectly. The universe does not care whether anyone understands. Pueblo Bonito is the largest and best known of Chaco Canyon's great houses. Its ruins sprawl across nearly 3 acres, containing approximately 600 rooms and 40 kivas arranged in a D-shaped plan that took over 300 years to complete. Visitors to Chaco Canyon invariably walk its hallways, stand in its plazas, and photograph its famous corner doorways. In the 1890s, Richard Wetherill, a rancher turned explorer who would become one of the most controversial figures in southwestern archaeology, conducted extensive excavations at Pueblo Bonito. Wetherill worked without formal training, motivated partly by genuine curiosity and partly by the commercial value of artifacts he recovered. His methods would be considered destructive by modern standards, but his documentation, while incomplete, provides crucial information about features that subsequent excavation and deterioration have obscured. In 1896, Wetherill's crew opened a room in the oldest section of Pueblo Bonito, in the northern rear of the structure. The room, subsequently designated Room 33, was not particularly impressive by architectural standards, a small enclosed space that showed evidence of having been deliberately sealed. Inside, they found something unprecedented. Room 33 contained burials. Not the casual interments occasionally found in Chacoan structures, but elaborate, high-status burials accompanied by extraordinary wealth. 2 primary individuals had been placed on a prepared floor covered with a layer of sand. Above and around them, thousands of artifacts had been deposited: turquoise pendants, jet beads, shell trumpets, wooden staffs, ceramic vessels, and more. The excavators recovered approximately 50,000 turquoise beads from Room 33. 15 pendants bore complex turquoise mosaics. More than 4,000 shell beads and ornaments accompanied the burials. Nothing remotely comparable had been found elsewhere in the ancient Southwest. Pueblo Bonito was not simply a great house. It was, in some sense, a mausoleum. This next part changed my entire perspective on ancient America. The assemblage from Room 33 represents the largest concentration of luxury goods ever recovered from a pre-Columbian site north of Mexico. The 50,000 turquoise beads alone would have required years of specialized labor to produce. Turquoise sources are scattered across the Southwest, but the quantities in Room 33 suggest systematic acquisition from multiple sources over extended periods. The 2 primary individuals in Room 33 were male, based on skeletal analysis. Both were relatively tall, standing near 6 feet, unusually large for ancestral Puebloan populations. One individual showed healed injuries suggesting a violent encounter earlier in life. Both showed nutritional indicators suggesting better diets than typical Chacoan residents. Subsequent analysis by the National Geographic Society and affiliated researchers in the 2010s applied ancient DNA techniques to skeletal materials from Room 33. The results surprised everyone. The 2 primary individuals were closely related to each other, probably grandfather and grandson. Additional individuals buried in Room 33 over the following decades were also closely related, forming a matrilineal descent group spanning 9 generations. The implications are significant. Chaco Canyon appears to have been ruled, at least partially, by an elite lineage that maintained power across centuries. The individuals in Room 33 were not simply wealthy people. They were members of a family that accumulated and retained power generation after generation. The technology problem here is not engineering but social organization. Hereditary leadership conflicts with many assumptions about ancestral Puebloan society, which has often been characterized as relatively egalitarian. The Room 33 evidence suggests something closer to a chiefdom or even an early state, with marked social stratification and concentrated power. I've shown this evidence to colleagues and gotten completely different reactions every time. What's your gut instinct telling you about this? Some see Room 33 as evidence for a more complex society than previously recognized. Others argue that the evidence admits multiple interpretations and that hereditary rule remains unproven. The comparative shock is simple. Nothing else in the ancient Southwest approaches Room 33 in concentration of wealth. Secondary burials throughout Chaco Canyon contain modest grave goods or none at all. The contrast between Room 33 and ordinary burials is absolute, a difference not of degree but of kind. Multiple research institutions have investigated Room 33 and its contents. The American Museum of Natural History, which acquired the Room 33 collection after Wetherill's excavations, conducted initial analyses. Subsequent work involved the Smithsonian Institution, the University of Virginia, Pennsylvania State University, and multiple other institutions. Chemical analysis of the turquoise determined that it came from sources scattered across a vast area, including mines in what is now Nevada, Colorado, and New Mexico. The Chacoans were not simply collecting local turquoise, they were importing material from distances exceeding 500 miles. Isotope analysis of skeletal materials has revealed that some individuals buried at Chaco Canyon came from distant locations. The canyon was a destination, a place that attracted or drew people from throughout the region. This finding supports the interpretation of Chaco as a pilgrimage center or political capital. The unexpected findings from Room 33 extend to health and diet. The Room 33 elite showed better nutrition and fewer indicators of physical stress than ordinary Chacoan residents. They lived longer, grew taller, and suffered fewer childhood diseases. Whatever social system produced these inequalities was effective at directing resources toward the privileged class. Missing from our understanding is any clear picture of how the Room 33 lineage maintained power. We see the results, the accumulated wealth, the elaborate burials. We do not see the mechanisms. Did they control trade routes? Did they command labor? Did they claim religious authority? The physical evidence cannot answer questions about social process. Academic controversy centers on whether Room 33 represents typical Chacoan social organization or an aberration. Some researchers argue that Chaco was always stratified, with elites controlling surplus production and labor. Others argue that the Room 33 lineage may have been unusual, perhaps eventually overthrown in a social transformation that contributed to Chaco's abandonment. The conservative theory positions Room 33 as evidence for emergent social complexity in the ancient Southwest. In this view, Chaco represents a society in transition, developing towards state-level organization but never quite achieving it. The Room 33 lineage held high status but perhaps not absolute power. Their burial treatment reflects respect rather than subjugation. The radical theory argues that Chaco was, in effect, a pre-Columbian kingdom, with the Room 33 lineage serving as something approaching royalty. This interpretation draws on evidence from massive labor mobilization, long-distance trade networks, and architectural investments that imply centralized authority. The concentration of wealth in Room 33 is not anomalous in this view. It is exactly what we should expect from a ruling dynasty. The fringe theory suggests that the Room 33 lineage derived their authority from esoteric knowledge, perhaps astronomical expertise or ritual specialization that ordinary people could not replicate. This interpretation emphasizes the coincidence of Room 33's location within Pueblo Benito's cosmologically significant architecture, positioned at the intersection of alignment patterns visible throughout the structure. All theories struggle with the end. The Room 33 lineage apparently terminated around 1130 CE, when the last related individual was interred and the room was definitively sealed. Shortly afterward, Chaco Canyon's monumental construction ceased, and the canyon entered a period of declining population that ended in effective abandonment by 1300. What happened to them? What ended their power? You are born into the lineage. Your mother's blood carries the authority of generations. You grow up in the great house, in rooms with higher ceilings and better light than ordinary people will ever see. You eat better, grow taller, live in a world where your needs are met by others' labor. You learn the responsibilities. The ceremonies require your presence. The observations require your understanding. The roads require your authorization. Turquoise flows toward you because turquoise has always flowed toward your family. You do not question this any more than you question the sunrise. When your grandfather dies, you help place him in the room beneath the floor, the room where the ancestors wait. You add turquoise to the offerings, more turquoise than any ordinary person will see in their lifetime. You seal the covering and know that someday, you will lie beside him, surrounded by the wealth that signifies what your family has been. The people outside the great house watch. They carry their burdens up the roads. They build what you tell them to build. Perhaps they resent you. Perhaps they revere you. Perhaps both. You do not know their inner lives, only their outer compliance. And then something changes. The rains fail, or the people refuse, or the balance tips in ways you cannot control. Your children will not inherit what you inherited. Your grandchildren will live elsewhere, carrying memories of greatness that no longer exists. The room waits beneath the floor, sealed now, forgotten soon, silent for 900 years until someone opens it again and wonders who you were. The Room 33 materials are now divided among several institutions. The American Museum of Natural History retains the bulk of the collection. Additional materials are housed at the Smithsonian Institution and the Chaco Culture National Historical Park Museum. Access for researchers requires permissions and coordination among multiple entities. Repatriation discussions have addressed some Room 33 materials under the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, NAGPRA. These discussions involve multiple Pueblo communities, each with legitimate claims to cultural affiliation with Chaco Canyon. The complexity of multi-tribal consultation has slowed but not halted repatriation processes. Recent developments include the application of increasingly sophisticated genetic and isotope techniques to skeletal materials. These analyses continue to refine understanding of the Room 33 individuals' origins, diets, and relationships. Each new study adds resolution to the picture while raising additional questions. For visitors today, Room 33 is not accessible. The feature lies beneath a stone cap installed during stabilization efforts. Interpretive materials at the park describe the burials and their significance, but the physical experience is limited to walking through Pueblo Benito's ruins and imagining what lies beneath. Indigenous perspectives on Room 33 vary among communities. Some representatives have expressed discomfort with the ongoing scientific analysis of ancestral remains. Others have welcomed research that demonstrates their ancestors' sophistication. The tension between scientific inquiry and cultural respect remains unresolved and perhaps unresolvable. Room 33 challenges comfortable assumptions about ancient America. We want to believe that pre-Columbian societies were egalitarian, that inequality is a European import, that indigenous peoples lived in harmony unmarred by hierarchy. Room 33 says otherwise. The ancestral Puebloans had elites. They had power concentrated in lineages. They had inequality expressed in life chances, in nutrition, in burial treatment. They were, in short, human, subject to the same social dynamics that produce stratification everywhere humans congregate in numbers. This is not a criticism. This is recognition. The Room 33 lineage achieved something remarkable, creating a system that concentrated resources and maintained power across centuries. Their achievement deserves acknowledgement precisely because it was difficult, precisely because it required sophistication, precisely because it was not inevitable. When we understand Chaco as a complex society rather than a simple one, we give its creators credit for the world they built. We recognize them as historical actors, making choices, competing for advantage, creating legacies that still provoke questions a millennium later. The turquoise waits in museum cases now, blue-green testament to ancient power. Someone wore those beads. Someone commanded their production. Someone believed they mattered enough to take into death. They were right. We are still talking about them. The story of Chaco's outliers begins with aerial observation, though the implications took decades to emerge. As early as the 1920s, researchers noted that great house architecture existed beyond Chaco Canyon itself, scattered across the San Juan Basin and beyond. But the systematic documentation of these outlier sites, and recognition of their relationship to the canyon center, awaited the comprehensive surveys of the late 20th century. Today, archaeologists recognize approximately 150 outlier communities within approximately 60 miles of Chaco Canyon, with additional related sites extending as far as southern Colorado and eastern Arizona. These outliers share architectural features with the Chaco Canyon great houses, Corvinier masonry, multi-story construction, enclosed plazas, and associated great kivas. Many are connected to the canyon by road segments visible in aerial photography. The pattern was not random. The outliers formed a system, a network of communities linked to the canyon center by roads, trade relationships, and presumably political or ceremonial ties. Chaco Canyon was not an isolated marvel but the hub of a regional phenomenon. But here is where the mystery deepens. In the 1980s, researcher Stephen Lexon, then at the University of New Mexico and later at the University of Colorado, noticed something that had escaped previous observers. A line drawn through Chaco Canyon extending both north and south passed through other major sites with remarkable precision. To the north, the line extended through Aztec ruins, a 12th-century great house in northern New Mexico that appears to have briefly succeeded Chaco as a regional center. To the south, the line extended to Pacoime, also known as Casas Grandes, a major site in Chihuahua, Mexico, that flourished in the 13th and 14th centuries. The meridian alignment, as Lexon called it, suggested a relationship among these sites that transcended geography. Could the inhabitants of Chaco have migrated north to Aztec and then south to Pacoime, carrying their cultural traditions along a deliberately chosen north-south axis? The idea was, and remains, controversial. But the alignment is real, verifiable by anyone with a map and a straight edge. The physical facts are simple. Chaco Canyon lies at approximately 107.95 degrees west longitude. Aztec ruins, some 55 miles due north, lies at approximately 108.00 degrees west longitude. The variance is roughly 3 miles, less than the width of a small town. Pacoime, over 400 miles to the south, lies at approximately 107.95 degrees west longitude, essentially identical to Chaco Canyon. The alignment across this vast distance is precise to within a few miles. The dating sequence supports a migration interpretation. Chaco Canyon flourished primarily between 850 and 1150 CE. Aztec ruins shows peak activity between 1100 and 1275 CE. Pacoime flourished between 1250 and 1450 CE. The centers appear to succeed each other in time, as if a population or tradition moved first north and then south along the meridian. The technology problem is surveying. How did ancient peoples, without modern instruments, establish and maintain a north-south alignment across hundreds of miles of varied terrain? Celestial navigation provides a partial answer. The North Star indicates true north, and careful observation could establish meridian lines. But the precision across such distances remains impressive. Comparison with other ancient alignments reveals both parallels and distinctions. Many ancient cultures, including the Maya, established astronomical alignments in their architecture. But a continental-scale meridian linking multiple independent sites across centuries has no clear parallel in pre-Columbian archaeology. The core impossibility is this: if the meridian alignment is intentional, it implies long-term planning, generational memory, and coordinated action across time scales that challenge conventional understanding of ancient societies. If it is coincidental, we must explain how 3 major sites happen to align by chance at the same longitude within the width of a few miles. Neither explanation satisfies completely. Lexon's meridian hypothesis, first proposed in his 1999 book, The Chaco Meridian, has generated sustained debate in southwestern archaeology. Supporters argue that the alignment is too precise to be coincidental and that the temporal succession of sites supports a migration model. Critics argue that the selection of sites is arbitrary, that other major sites do not fall on the meridian, and that the hypothesis cannot be tested through conventional archaeological methods. Research methods bearing on the hypothesis have included ceramic analysis, which can track the movement of pottery styles, architectural documentation, which can identify continuities in building techniques, and increasingly, genetic analysis, which can trace biological relationships among populations. Ceramic evidence provides partial support. Some pottery types found at Aztec ruins show clear affinities with Chaco Canyon styles, suggesting either direct migration or intensive contact. The Pacoima connection is more tenuous, with fewer obvious stylistic links but some shared iconographic elements. Unexpected findings emerge from settlement pattern analysis. The Chaco road system extends primarily east and west from the canyon, not north-south. If the meridian represented a fundamental axis of Chacoan cosmology, why do the roads not follow it? This apparent contradiction has not been satisfactorily explained. Missing pieces include any documentary evidence from the societies involved. Unlike the Maya, who left written records, the ancestral Puebloans relied on oral traditions that have not preserved specific information about long-distance migrations or intersite relationships. Academic controversy remains sharp. Some researchers dismiss the meridian hypothesis as pattern-seeking, finding significance in coincidence. Others consider it a productive framework that highlights otherwise overlooked connections. The debate continues in journal articles, conference presentations, and academic corridors. The conservative theory holds that the meridian alignment is coincidental. North-south movement along the Rio Grande and other north-south oriented features is natural given the geography of the region. Major sites arising along this axis reflect environmental opportunities rather than deliberate alignment. The apparent precision dissolves when measurement uncertainties are considered. The radical theory, Lexon's position, argues that the alignment was intentional and meaningful. In this view, the societies centered at Chaco, Aztec, and Pacoima understood themselves as connected, maintaining a tradition of north-south axis orientation that structured their settlements and movements. The meridian was a line of power, a cosmological feature made manifest in geography. The fringe theory extends the meridian concept to include additional sites and broader implications. Some proponents have suggested that the meridian represents a line of astronomical significance, perhaps related to zenith sun positions or stellar alignments. Others have proposed that the meridian connected to Mesoamerican traditions, reflecting contacts or influences from the south that shaped southwestern development. All theories struggle with the gap between evidence and interpretation. The alignment exists. The intention behind it, if any, cannot be recovered through archaeological methods. We are left with pattern and speculation, geometry and imagination. Imagine the decision to leave. Chaco Canyon has been home for generations, but something has changed. The rains are less reliable. The ceremonies seem less effective. Tensions rise between factions, between families, between visions of the future. Someone remembers the direction. North is the direction of ancestors, the direction of origins, the direction of starting over. Someone proposes migration, following the axis that has always mattered, moving toward renewal. The journey takes generations. Not a single dramatic departure but a gradual shift, some families moving while others stay. Connections maintained across the distance until finally the old center is empty, and the new center holds the power. Then it happens again. Aztec fails, or changes, or simply exhausts its possibilities. Someone remembers the direction again. South now, the opposite of north, the completing of a cosmic circuit. The journey is longer this time, hundreds of miles into lands that speak different languages, worship different powers. But the axis remains. The line remains. Whatever was important about north-south remains, carried in memory and practice across centuries and across borders. This is what cultural continuity looks like, not the preservation of specific forms but the maintenance of underlying principles. The meridian, if intentional, represents a commitment to orientation that transcended any particular place. Aztec Ruins National Monument, located near Farmington, New Mexico, preserves one of the best reconstructed great houses in the Southwest. The site's Great Kiva was restored in the 1930s and provides visitors with an unusual opportunity to enter a roof ceremonial structure similar to those that once stood throughout the region. Pacoima, also known as Casas Grandes, is located in Chihuahua, Mexico, and is protected as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The site features distinctive adobe architecture, including multi-story buildings and a complex water management system that differs from Chacoan traditions while showing possible connections. The meridian hypothesis has influenced how some researchers think about southwestern prehistory, encouraging consideration of long-distance relationships and multi-generational processes. Even critics acknowledge that Lexon's proposal has stimulated productive debate. Ongoing research continues to test and refine the hypothesis. New dating techniques may clarify the temporal relationships among sites. Genetic studies may reveal biological connections or discontinuities. Ceramic and architectural analyses continue to document similarities and differences. For visitors, the opportunity to experience sites along the proposed meridian offers a physical connection to the hypothesis. Standing at Chaco Canyon, driving north to Aztec ruins, imagining the continuation south to Pequim, one can feel the scale of the alignment, the vastness of the distances. The improbability of coincidence. The meridian hypothesis asks us to think in scales that do not come naturally. Centuries. Hundreds of miles. Decisions made by people who would never see their consequences, commitments honored by descendants who had never met the original decision makers. Modern societies struggle to plan decades ahead. Our infrastructure decays while we debate maintenance. Our climate changes while we discuss targets. The idea that ancient peoples might have thought and acted across century scales, maintaining alignments and traditions across generations, challenges our assumptions about human capacity. Perhaps the meridian was intentional. Perhaps ancient Chacoans understood something about north-south orientation that mattered enough to structure their world around it. Perhaps their descendants carried that understanding through migrations and transformations, maintaining the axis even as everything else changed. Or perhaps the alignment is coincidence, a pattern we impose on geography that owes nothing to ancient intention. The universe contains many coincidences. Not every alignment requires explanation. We cannot know. The decision makers are gone. Their reasons are gone. Only the alignment remains, a line on a map, a question without an answer, an invitation to wonder. After everything we've explored, which of these mysteries disturbed you the most? And more importantly, why do you think these stories were hidden for so long? Chaco Canyon contains more questions than answers. The Great North Road leads somewhere we cannot identify. The sun-dagger track cycles we have forgotten to observe. Room 33 holds individuals whose power exceeded anything we expected. The meridian connects sites across distances that challenge our sense of ancient possibility. These are not minor puzzles. These are fundamental challenges to our understanding of what ancient Americans accomplished, what they knew, what they intended, what they valued. Each mystery points toward capabilities and commitments that our narratives have not fully incorporated. The ancestral Puebloans left Chaco Canyon in the 12th and 13th centuries. They dispersed to other regions, merged with other peoples, became ancestors of today's Pueblo communities. Their direct descendants continue to live in New Mexico and Arizona, maintaining traditions that connect them to the ancient canyon. But the specific knowledge that created Chaco's wonders did not survive intact. The astronomical observations, the engineering calculations, the social structures, the beliefs that gave meaning to road alignments and burial deposits, these have faded beyond recovery. We have the monuments. We have lost the operators. This is the human condition, perhaps. Each generation builds on what previous generations created. Each generation also loses what previous generations knew. The balance is never even. Some knowledge persists, other knowledge vanishes. We cannot predict in advance what will survive and what will disappear. The mysteries of Chaco Canyon matter because they remind us of this fragility. 1,000 years ago, people knew things we have forgotten. They achieved things we struggle to explain. They left traces that continue to puzzle those who come after. What will we leave? What will future people fail to understand about us? What mysteries will we become? Stand in Chaco Canyon at dawn. Watch the light touch the great houses, the same light that touched them when they were new, when people walked their corridors, when the roads stretched toward horizons full of intention. The silence is profound. The mystery is permanent. We will keep asking questions. The canyon will keep holding its answers, Just out of reach, visible but not quite readable, there but not quite ours. This is archaeology. This is history. This is the endless human effort to understand what came before. And sometimes, understanding means accepting that some things will never be fully explained. The road leads north. The sun marks time. The burials hold their secrets. The alignment persists. Chaco waits.